Today's sky doesn't arrive with drama, it arrives with precision. You may not feel an emotional surge, but you'll notice something quieter happen instead. A tightening of focus, a sense that the day has weight before it has feeling. Air and earth meet in a way that sharpens awareness while containing emotion. Many people sense it not as a mood, but as a posture, an internal adjustment that happens before the day has fully started. Aquarius brings alertness to the mind. It favors observation, pattern recognition, and stepping back far enough to see how things connect. With so many planets gathered there, thought becomes dominant. Ideas move quickly. The future pulls attention forward. You may notice yourself thinking about systems, structures, or long-term direction almost automatically, even if the day ahead is ordinary. At the same time, Capricorn grounds the emotional field. The moon here does not dramatize feelings. It compresses them, organizes them, and asks whether they are useful or necessary. This combination creates an inner climate that feels mentally awake but emotionally reserved. You may not feel particularly expressive or sentimental today, even if you are usually sensitive. Instead, there is a sense of containment. Feelings exist, but they are held close, almost behind glass. This is not suppression, it is prioritization. Capricorn energy wants to know what matters now, what needs structure, what requires responsibility. For many people, this shows up as an early awareness of the day's weight, not heaviness in a negative sense, but gravity. The sense that today is about alignment rather than release. You might feel the urge to get oriented quickly, to understand your role, your tasks, your limits. The inner question becomes less about how you feel and more about how things are arranged. At the same time, Aquarius prevents the day from becoming rigid or purely duty-driven. It keeps perspective wide. Even while dealing with responsibility, there is an awareness that this is part of a larger system, not a personal burden alone. You may notice yourself thinking more impersonally, less emotionally attached to outcomes, more focused on clarity than reassurance. This is the inner shift the day begins with. A movement away from emotional intensity and toward sober awareness. Not cold, not detached, but measured. The sky supports noticing where you stand, how you are positioned, and what is realistically required of you now. Before action, before reaction, there is a pause, a moment of internal alignment where thinking and responsibility quietly meet, setting the tone for everything that follows. As this day unfolds, the first place this shift is usually felt is not in thought, but in the body. The moon in early Capricorn speaks through physical sensation before it becomes emotion or narrative. Many people notice signals almost immediately after waking. A stiffness in the neck or shoulders, a jaw that feels slightly clenched without conscious effort, a breath that stays higher in the chest until you deliberately slow it down. These are not signs that something is wrong. They are signs that the system is orienting itself. Capricorn energy brings awareness to posture, structure, and containment. You might catch yourself sitting more upright than usual, or moving with a bit more deliberation. There can be a subtle sense of holding yourself together, as if the body is preparing to carry responsibility. This is especially noticeable in the spine and lower back, areas associated with support and endurance. If you feel heavier in your body today, it is not fatigue in the usual sense. It is gravity. The body registering that steadiness is required. At the same time, the strong Aquarius influence keeps energy moving upward toward the head. This can create a slight disconnect between thinking and sensing. Thoughts may race ahead while the body feels slower, more grounded, less reactive. You might notice moments where you are mentally planning while your body lags behind, asking for a pause. This mismatch can feel like restlessness or mild irritation if it goes unnoticed. Saturn at the final degree of Pisces adds another layer to the physical experience. There can be a low-level background tiredness that is not tied to what you did yesterday. This is the kind of fatigue that comes from emotional labor carried over time. It may show up as heaviness in the limbs, a desire to lie down even if you slept well, or a sense that your energy has been diffused. Neptune, newly in Pisces, increases sensitivity, making you more porous to the environments and people around you. Crowded spaces, loud noises, or emotionally charged conversations may register more strongly in the body. These sensations are early signals, not problems to fix. They are information. The body is communicating that today is not about pushing through or overriding signals. It is about listening before acting. Even small cues matter. A sigh that comes out unexpectedly. A need to stretch the hips or calves. A moment where you realize you have been holding your breath while reading an email. Uranus in Taurus supports responding to these cues with small physical adjustments. Standing up instead of sitting longer. Changing where you work for an hour. Drinking water before coffee. These are not wellness rituals. They are micro resets that help the nervous system recalibrate. When you respond early, the body does not need to escalate its signals. Chiron in Aries may highlight where hesitation lives physically. You might feel a tightening in the stomach before asserting a preference, or a quickening of the heart before initiating something. The invitation here is not to push past these sensations, but to notice them without judgment. Awareness itself often softens the signal. By tuning into these early bodily experiences, you stay aligned with the day's rhythm. The body becomes a quiet guide, showing you where to slow down, where to support yourself, and where readiness is forming beneath the surface, even before you feel emotionally prepared. As these inner and physical signals move into the flow of the day, they begin to touch very ordinary parts of life. Work, communication, small decisions, the pace at which you move through tasks. This is where the contrast of the day becomes most visible. Mentally, you may feel clear and capable. Practically, you may be getting things done. But emotionally, there can be a sense of neutrality, even distance, that feels unfamiliar or slightly uncomfortable. At work, this often looks like efficiency without enthusiasm. You get things done, you respond clearly, you move forward, but the usual emotional charge isn't there. That doesn't mean you care less. It means the system is choosing structure over stimulation today. Conversations today may also feel different. Aquarius energy supports clear thinking and objective language, while Capricorn keeps emotion contained. You might notice yourself speaking more directly, with fewer explanations or emotional qualifiers. Others may experience this as calm or grounded. Internally, you might simply feel less inclined to elaborate. This is not withdrawal. It is discernment about what actually needs to be said. Decision-making follows a similar pattern. Choices that usually involve a lot of emotional processing may feel surprisingly straightforward. Not because the stakes are lower, but because the mind and environment are aligned enough to see what is realistic. This can be a relief, but it can also feel strange if you are used to checking your feelings before moving forward. Today's rhythm favors clarity first, emotional integration later. At the same time, there can be subtle points where energy leaks. Overthinking future steps. Mentally rehearsing conversations that have not happened. Taking on responsibility that is not yours. These leaks do not come from chaos. They come from trying to maintain control while staying mentally ahead. When this happens, the body often signals it through tension or a sudden drop in focus. Uranus in Taurus offers small openings here. A task you thought would take hours might be simplified. A financial or logistical issue may reveal a more practical solution. These are not breakthroughs, they are course corrections. The opportunity is to notice them instead of pushing through the original plan out of habit. Throughout the day, there may also be moments where you feel the urge to pause rather than proceed. Not because you are stuck, but because something needs to settle internally. Allowing yourself to delay a response, reschedule a minor task, or step away briefly can prevent unnecessary friction later. This is how the day protects energy rather than draining it. In daily life, this is not a call to disengage or withdraw. It is an invitation to operate with quieter precision, to let clarity guide action without demanding emotional confirmation. When you respect this rhythm, work feels steadier, communication cleaner, and decisions less heavy, even if they are not accompanied by excitement. At the center of today is a pause, not hesitation, not resistance, a pause between mental readiness and emotional readiness. Your mind is already moving forward, your emotional system is still organizing. This gap can feel uncomfortable if you are used to acting only when everything inside agrees at the same time. Many people interpret this state as something being wrong. They assume that if they do not feel excited, inspired, or emotionally certain, they must be forcing themselves or losing alignment. But the pattern today is not about forcing, it is about sequencing. Thinking comes first, feeling integrates later. The nervous system is asking for order before expression. This pattern often shows up as self-judgment. You might notice thoughts like, "Why am I not more motivated? Why do I feel so neutral? Or why does this feel heavier than it should?" These questions are understandable, but they miss the point of the day. Neutrality is not a failure state. It is a holding state. A place where internal structure is being formed quietly, without emotional drama. There can also be a tendency to mistake containment for suppression. Capricorn moon energy can feel emotionally quiet, and that quiet can trigger anxiety in people who are used to processing everything through feeling. The absence of emotional intensity can feel like disconnection. In reality, it is often the opposite. Emotion is being held long enough to become usable rather than reactive. Another aspect of this pattern is the urge to overmanage. When emotion is contained and the mind is active, there can be a temptation to plan too far ahead, to mentally resolve things that are not ready to be resolved. This is where energy leaks occur, not through action, but through excessive mental rehearsal. Thinking about conversations that have not happened, preparing for outcomes that are not required today. The core pattern, then, is not about doing more or doing less. It is about allowing structure to form without demanding emotional validation. It is about letting clarity exist without immediately translating it into feeling. This is especially important for people who equate alignment with emotional resonance. Today challenges that equation gently. There may also be moments where you feel capable but not inspired, clear but not passionate. This does not mean the direction is wrong. It means the system is calibrating, like tightening bolts before turning on a machine. The work happens quietly, internally, before movement becomes smooth. When this pattern is misunderstood, people tend to push themselves to feel something they do not yet feel, or they delay action waiting for emotional certainty. Both approaches create friction. The invitation today is to recognize that readiness does not always announce itself with enthusiasm. Sometimes it arrives as steadiness, as the absence of inner argument, as knowing what you will not question anymore. If you allow this pattern to exist without judgment, it becomes supportive rather than heavy. The pause becomes productive, the neutrality becomes grounding, and the sense of being emotionally behind transforms into a quiet trust that integration is already happening, even if it is not loud enough to demand attention yet. This pattern makes more sense when you look at how the sky is layered today. The pause between mental clarity and emotional readiness is not accidental. It is created by several forces working together, each contributing a different texture to the experience. The Capricorn moon sets the emotional tone. Early degrees of Capricorn are about initiation into responsibility, not mastery of it. Emotionally, this is not a place of comfort or release. It is a place of assessment. The moon here asks, what needs to be held? What needs to be structured, and what can no longer remain vague? That question alone can feel heavy if you are used to emotional flow rather than emotional containment. But this containment is not meant to last forever. It is a temporary compression that allows form to emerge. At the same time, the Aquarius concentration keeps the mind active and future-oriented. With the Sun, Mercury, Mars, Venus, and Pluto all there, consciousness naturally lifts upward. Aquarius does not process experience through feeling first. It processes through understanding. It wants to see patterns, systems, and long-term implications. This explains why many people feel mentally ready today, even while emotionally quieter. The mind is doing its job efficiently. Pluto's presence in Aquarius adds depth without intensity. It brings awareness of where your thinking has been shaped by systems you did not consciously choose. Cultural expectations, professional roles, invisible rules about productivity or worth. This awareness does not demand rebellion today, it simply reveals. And revelation alone can create a sense of distance from emotion because you are no longer fully inside the story, you are observing it. Saturn's position at the final degree of Pisces is especially important here. This degree carries the feeling of something finishing, dissolving, or being released, but without ceremony. Emotional patterns that once made sense may feel heavier now, not because they are wrong, but because their time is ending. This can register as fatigue, neutrality, or a sense that old emotional responses no longer fit the situation. Saturn does not rush this process. It asks for acceptance rather than action. Neptune, newly at the beginning of Pisces, softens everything underneath. Sensitivity is high, but it is diffuse. You may feel more permeable, more affected by subtle cues, even as you try to stay composed. This combination of Saturn and Neptune creates a quiet tension. One wants closure, the other dissolves boundaries. Together, they encourage clear but gentle limits, especially around emotional engagement. Uranus in Taurus provides the stabilizing counterpoint. It reminds the system that change does not have to be dramatic to be effective. Small shifts in how you use your time, energy, or resources can relieve pressure that has been building for a while. This is why the day responds so well to simplification rather than expansion. Chiron in Aries adds awareness around initiation. You may notice where hesitation arises when you consider taking a step, even a small one. This hesitation is not a flaw. It is a signal pointing to where confidence is still integrating with action. Today is not asking you to override it. It is asking you to notice it. Taken together, these transits explain why the day feels structured but sensitive, clear but emotionally quiet. The pattern is not confusion. It is recalibration. The sky is rearranging the order in which you experience clarity, emotion, and movement, so that when action does come, it rests on something solid rather than reactive. Nothing here is broken. What you're feeling is what recalibration feels like before movement becomes clean. Many people carry an old assumption into days like this. The idea that before you move, you should feel inspired. That before you commit, you should feel emotionally certain. That clarity is supposed to arrive with energy, enthusiasm, or a strong internal yes. When that does not happen, the instinct is to pause indefinitely or to question your alignment. Today gently challenges that assumption. With the moon in Capricorn and so much emphasis in Aquarius, readiness is not emotional first. It is structural. It comes from seeing what is realistic, what is sustainable, and what no longer needs debate. This kind of clarity is quieter than motivation. It does not create a rush. It creates a sense of internal order. If you feel neutral instead of excited, steady instead of passionate, that's not a downgrade. It's a signal you're no longer being driven by urgency or emotional hunger. It is a different form of readiness. Emotional intensity is not always a reliable signal of truth. Sometimes it reflects anxiety, urgency, or the need for reassurance. Today's sky favors a calmer signal, one that feels less like desire and more like acceptance. Another old framing says that if you are aligned, you should feel emotionally connected to everything you do. Capricorn and Aquarius together suggest something else. You can act with integrity without feeling emotionally engaged in every moment. You can make a clean decision without needing to process it deeply first. You can move forward without narrating the experience to yourself. This is especially relevant for people who are introspective and self-aware. The habit of constant emotional checking can become a form of delay, not because you are avoiding action, but because you are waiting for an internal state that is not required today. The sky is not asking for emotional confirmation, it is asking for coherence. There is also a subtle reframe around neutrality. Many people interpret emotional flatness as burnout or disengagement, but neutrality can be a sign that the system is resting from overreaction. It can indicate that something has settled enough to no longer demand attention. In that sense, neutrality is not emptiness, it is space. Today invites you to trust that space. Instead of asking, "How do I feel about this?" a more supportive question might be, "Does this make sense to carry forward right now?" Instead of waiting to feel ready, you may notice that readiness appears as the absence of resistance rather than the presence of excitement. This is not about pushing yourself, it is about recognizing a different language of alignment, one that speaks through steadiness, through quiet certainty, through knowing what you will stop negotiating with yourself about. When you allow that reframe, the day feels less heavy and more intentional, even without emotional highs. To move through this day with less friction, the key is not to add more effort, but to work with the rhythm that is already present. The sky today favors small, respectful adjustments rather than big, emotional pushes. When the system is organizing internally, the most supportive response is to cooperate with that process instead of trying to override it. One way this shows up is in pacing. You may notice that when you slow down just slightly, things actually move more smoothly. Not because you are doing less, but because you are no longer rushing ahead of yourself. This can be as simple as finishing one task before opening the next tab, or taking a brief pause before responding to a message. These moments of containment prevent energy from leaking into unnecessary mental loops. Another supportive approach is to let decisions be clean, even if they are not emotionally charged. If something feels mentally clear and does not trigger inner resistance, that may be enough for today. You do not need to fully process the feeling side immediately. Emotional integration often happens later, once the structure is in place. Trust that sequence. The body can help you here. A brief check-in once or twice during the day can reset your nervous system. Notice where tension is collecting: the jaw, the shoulders, the lower back. Softening just one area, even slightly, can signal safety to the body. This does not require a routine or a ritual. It can happen in a moment, quietly, without drawing attention. Uranus in Taurus supports making things easier where you can. If something feels unnecessarily complicated, ask whether it truly needs to be that way today. Simplifying a process, changing your environment, or adjusting how you use your time can create immediate relief. These are not shortcuts. They are intelligent adaptations. It can also help to be mindful of emotional boundaries. With sensitivity running underneath the surface, you may absorb more than you realize. Sandis. Giving yourself permission not to engage immediately, not to fix, not to carry someone else's emotional weight can preserve energy without guilt. This is not withdrawal. It is discernment. As the day continues, notice moments where you stop overthinking naturally, where a question no longer feels urgent, where a decision settles without argument. These are signs that integration is happening. You do not need to force insight or meaning out of them. Let them be quiet. The intention for today is not to feel better or to arrive somewhere new. It is to move through the day with steadiness, allowing structure to support you. When you honor that, the nervous system relaxes, mental clarity stays intact, and by evening there is often a subtle sense of having handled the day well, even if nothing remarkable happened. That quiet competence is exactly what this sky is offering. As the day comes to a close, the dominant feeling for many people is not relief or excitement, but steadiness. There may be a sense that things are more contained than they were in the morning, not necessarily lighter, but clearer. The kind of clarity that does not need to announce itself or be explained. It simply settles. This is not a night that asks for reflection in big words or dramatic conclusions. The work of the day has been internal, subtle, and largely invisible. Structure has formed quietly. Some decisions may have resolved themselves without effort. Some questions may have lost their urgency. That is a sign of integration, not avoidance. If you look back over the day, you might notice that you moved through it with fewer emotional spikes, that you did not need to convince yourself to keep going, that you handled responsibility without becoming overwhelmed by it. These are small but meaningful shifts. They do not show up as milestones, but they change how the system holds itself. Tonight, it is enough to acknowledge that you showed up with awareness, that you did not push for feeling when steadiness was what was needed, that you allowed clarity to exist without demanding emotional intensity. This is how sustainable alignment is built, one quiet day at a time. If there is a simple way to close the day, it is this. Let yourself stop trying to optimize or interpret the experience. Notice where your body feels more settled than it did earlier. Notice what no longer needs your attention. You do not need to plan tomorrow tonight. You do not need to extract meaning from everything. This sky does not promise anything. It does not ask for belief or commitment. It simply supports honesty with your own pace. If you end the day feeling a little more contained, a little more grounded, that is enough. You can carry that steadiness forward without effort. And whatever comes next will have something solid to land on.